This review is brought to you in part by Ryder's Hobby Shops, where the fun begins. Stop in to one of Ryder's 2 convenient Michigan locations where you'll find a full range of the latest hobby products, supplies, parts, tools, and paint. This review covers the Double Whammy. It's a 53 Hemi Studebaker in 125 scale. Now this is a 3-in-1 kit from AMT number 30107. Now, Raymond Loewy was Studebaker's chief design consultant, and the 53 Stude's stunning lines were actually the work of Loewy's lead engineer, Bob Bork, aided by Bob Koto. With fully enclosed fender wells and sleek styling, it was an instant success. Most auto enthusiasts agree that the 53 Studebaker was one of the most beautiful cars of its age. Now, this kit was originally issued in '65, and it's had several reissues over the years. It contains 173 parts molded in light gray, chrome, clear, and clear red. Now, it's built one of 3 ways: stock, custom, or drag, and there's a chopped top option for the drag version, but could also be used for the custom. It's not really that difficult to do, but probably not, for a beginner to try. It also has 2 engine options: a stock Studebaker 289 V8 or a dual supercharged Chrysler Hemi engine with Hillborn injection for the drag version. Now, anyone with basic modeling skills should be able to assemble this kit nicely, with the exception of the body mods for the drag version. And when completed, the kit measures 7 3/4 inches long, 2 inches high, and 3 1/4 inches wide. Here's a look at the kit's stock and custom versions that you can build as well. Now, as you see here from some old footage, the 53 Studebaker was no stranger to the drag strip. It also made Bonneville Salt Flat record runs, so it's not so far-fetched as you might seem. Here are the contents of the kit. As you can see, there's big, massive rear slick tires for the drag version, a couple of options for the top, and 2 hoods. One of them in the upper left is a clear double blower arrangement. You can either paint that or just leave it clear. Now remember to heed the manufacturer safety and use guidelines when using any of the products that you see or hear used in the review. Now, here are the decals for the kit. They're very colorful. The register is pretty good, and even after all the years sitting in that model box, they still went on well and performed well. You won't even need setting solution for these. Here are the parts for the engine, and most of the parts, of course, are painted Hemi orange with steel on the transmission, and the rest of the engine parts are mostly chrome, but paint the blower belt flat black, and the pulleys are silver color. Now, the pyramid manifold gets painted aluminum. So here is the left side of the completed engine. It goes together pretty well. Now, of course, you notice that the headers are not in place, as well as the scoops for the blower. Those will be added after the motor is situated, so that you get a proper alignment with both of those units, and just to make sure that they line up, with the ends of the headers or the exhaust, and the blowers are protruding through that hood. Now, the stock tires are solid, but they've got a good tread detail, and the slicks are hollow, and as we're building the race engine, we'll be using those. On the sidewalls, some pretty good script detail as well. The front tires for the stock unit are used for the drag version, and those tires are solid, so push the wheel fronts and backs into place. And now you can stage the rear wheels to the parts there, and we'll assemble those just shortly here. The rear wheel fronts and the backs should be assembled first and then pushed into the tires. And I found the wheels to be a bit too wide, so I trimmed 1/8 of an inch from the mating surfaces before gluing the backs into place. The tire's inside diameter is a little bit loose on these wheels, so I used some foam rubber in the tires to give it some support. Now, the brake drums with the larger holes are for the front, and I found that they needed to be opened up just a little bit, but you can test yours by pushing the front plastic axles into place before you assemble. If you need to, like I did here, I opened the holes up for the front brakes so the axles would fit. And in the back, the smaller axles are made of metal, so they fit just fine. Here are the backing plates for the wheels, and the ones with the pins there they go into the front for the altered suspension height. Here are the assembled front and rear tires with a little work. They make a very nice look. You could also detail that script on the sidewalls as well. And now locate your engine mounts, and they are separate from the frame, and you see where the Sharpie is there. That's where they're mounted. So go ahead and glue those into place. Now the arrows here point to where the engine mounts are mounted on the frame. One little detail that I made for the drag version is to remove the sway bar. It's removed for weight and to help the engine and traction transfer to the rear. And now get the rest of the parts out for the front suspension and arrange them for construction. What you see here are the steering linkage parts, and they are made so that the front wheels are posable. This is the assembled front suspension. You can see the spindles there have had their paint scraped off. Glue doesn't stick to paint very well, or chrome, so remember that when you use chrome parts. Clean up the header pipes and the parting line seams and injection points, and I painted it flat black as they often were painted, to set those aside to dry for later. Now look for your rear suspension parts from the kit. Glue the two halves of the rear axle and pumpkin together, and then paint the unit rear suspension a medium black. And now we can put the underside together, including the engine and drive shaft, along with the rear axle and suspension there. And you can place those into position now. And also, once you've got that engine mounted, you can glue the headers into position on the engine. Just like I said before, scrape off the paint so you get a good adhesion with the glue. Now you can flip that chassis over and squeeze the tires together against the axles, and you have a rolling chassis. The dash has some nice detail molded into the gauges, etc., and so you can paint that backdrop with chrome and give the gauges some detailing. It also has an optional racing and custom steering wheel, and for the racing version you can put that tachometer right on the stock or the column there for the steering wheel. Clean up the parts for your roll cage, injection points and parting lines, etc., and retain the little pins and receivers that will be used to build it. And then go ahead and assemble your roll cage as per instructions. Pretty simple for the 60s were a simple time for roll cages. One little hint, I used some slow setting glue to make sure that it stayed in form, but I also let it get a little bit tacky before I put the parts together to try and retain it. We'll be using the single drag version seat, and it does come with some seat belts. Here's the interior tub, and I painted the entire thing a medium gray to solidify this as a drag version car, which didn't have a lot of attention to the interior. Now the tub has just got some basic side panel detail, so glue the shifter in first and then the seat and the dash. The roll cage is then glued in after that. And now we're going to do a little bit of kit bashing, and that's where the top gets cut, and the chop top requires some body work. Now there's some marks on the inside of the body showing where to cut the top off, and there's a separate top section that will fit in its place, and glass to use for the chopped version. Now on the drag version, those fender wells are almost completely trimmed out, and there's no markings on the inside of the body to show where to trim. So this issue here is touched on in the build pictures, and you can see it's a pretty wide cut because they're very large tires. So cut those pieces out and smooth the seams. You may need a little sanding sticks or running some sandpaper around there to get everything looking nice. And also the top where you chopped that, you may need a little putty to cover up that seam. Also for the drag version, there are pieces that are filler panels that will go in the front to eliminate some of the air drag and push and the drag version for extra speed. And now you can locate the mounting points where the tub will fit to the chassis, and then make sure you scrape any paint off there and glue it in place. And now you can add the tail lights, the red tail lights, to the bezels there with some white glue, and get out the bumper and the push bars that are used in the back end. Here's how those pieces will look when you're done. And as you can see here, I elected to use a maroon color, a one-shot brand 108L for my body. And after all the puttying was done, smooth her up and give her your final coats of paint. Here are the blowers for the unit. They're two-piece, so you'll have to assemble those, and yes, they'll have a longitudinal seam, but scrape some of the glue off from the contact points on the underside, and then use some slow setting glue to put those into position, and after you fit the hood there, you can adjust them slightly so that they protrude through your openings just nicely. Now, here are the parts that were left over, and no matter which version you build, you'll have the parts for the other two versions left over, along with some decals depending on whether you use the drag or stock versions, etc. Well, there you have it. This stunning model is going to be a real nice looker when you put it on your shelf. Now, after I had painted the body, I cleared it, and the decals were on. I gave it some clear coats. The windows don't fit exactly properly on the chopped version. About the only way to remedy that would be to cut the windows all apart and maybe just use the front and back ones and fit those more properly into the openings. But the racing version is a little more for the advanced builder, as you can tell. But the other two, the stock versions, are pretty easy kits to build, and it's a nice model with 3 different versions. So if I were you, I'd buy one and put it on my shelf. Well, we hope you like this premium step-by-step model kit review. And so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can do that by clicking in the right-hand corner on the icon of any of our reviews. You can also find us on Facebook or our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks.